she mocked the human soldier, until her mother ordered, "Bow before him." The arrogant princess. The grand hall of Zentari Prime sparkled with crystalline lights that danced across walls made of living glass. Delegates from hundreds of worlds filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a chorus of celebration. The war was over. Peace had finally arrived after 3 years of darkness that had threatened to consume the entire galaxy. Princess Lysa of the Karvathi Empire swept through the crowd like a comet blazing across the night sky. Her silver skin shimmered under the lights and her elegant robes flowed behind her like water. She was young, barely 25 cycles old, with sharp violet eyes that missed nothing. Behind her walked her companions, other young nobles who had never known true hardship or real fear. The Karvathi were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most advanced species. Their technology was legendary. Their warriors were enhanced with cybernetic improvements, and their ships could tear through space faster than most civilizations could dream. They had ruled their sector for 10,000 years, and everyone knew it. Lisa had grown up hearing stories of Karvathi superiority. Her tutors had taught her about the primitive species that populated the outer regions. She had learned about their simple tools, their basic understanding of physics, and their laughable attempts at space travel. She believed every word because she had never been told otherwise. The celebration was magnificent. Diplomats exchanged gifts and promises. Military leaders shared stories of battles fought and won. Everyone seemed eager to forget the horrors they had witnessed and embrace the future. Lisa found it all rather boring. She had attended dozens of these events, and they were always the same. Then her eyes fell upon the human delegation standing near the far wall. She stopped walking so suddenly that one of her companions bumped into her. Her eyes widened with something between curiosity and disdain. The humans stood in perfect formation, their dark blue uniforms crisp and formal. They wore no enhanced armor, no visible weapons, no technological augmentations that she could see. They looked impossibly plain compared to the other species present. Small frames, soft skin, no natural defenses whatsoever. Captain Marcus Chen stood at the front of the human group. He was average height for his species, with dark hair cut short and brown eyes that stared straight ahead. His uniform displayed several colorful ribbons across his chest, though Lisa had no idea what they meant. His face bore a long scar that ran from his left eyebrow down to his jaw, and his hands showed signs of old burns and injuries. Lisa felt a laugh bubbling up from her chest. She could not help herself. These were the famous humans she had heard whispers about? These small, fragile-looking beings? She turned to her companions with a smile that was anything but kind. "Look at them," she said loudly enough for nearby delegates to hear. "The humans have actually come to a military celebration." "How amusing," her companions giggled nervously. A few other young nobles drifted closer, sensing entertainment. Lisa felt energized by the attention. She had been bored all evening, and now she had found something interesting. She walked toward the human delegation with deliberate slowness, her robes swishing dramatically. The humans did not move. They stood like statues, eyes forward, faces neutral. This annoyed Lisa even more. Why did they not react? Why did they not acknowledge her presence? "Tell me," she said, addressing Captain Chen directly. "What exactly did your people contribute to the war effort? Did you carry messages, perhaps? Or maybe you polished the real warriors' equipment?" A few delegates nearby shifted uncomfortably. Some walked away, sensing trouble. Others stayed, curious about what would happen next. The humans remained silent and still. Lisa circled Captain Chen slowly, examining him like a scientist might study an interesting specimen. "You have no natural armor," she observed. "No enhanced strength. No advanced healing abilities. Your ships are slow and clumsy. Your weapons are primitive projectile throwers. And yet here you stand, pretending to be equals among true warriors." She reached out as if to touch the scar on his face, but stopped just short. "What happened here? Did you trip and fall? Did you walk into a door?" Her companions laughed louder now, emboldened by her boldness. Captain Chen's jaw tightened slightly, but he did not speak. His eyes remained fixed on a point somewhere beyond Lisa's shoulder. His hands stayed clasped behind his back, perfectly still despite the insults. "They cannot even defend themselves with words," Lisa announced to the growing crowd. "Look at them, silent and still like frightened animals hoping the predator will pass them by. This is what Earth produces? This is what we fought alongside?" An older diplomat, a Thexian with gray scales and wise eyes, stepped forward. Princess Lissa, perhaps you should— Should what? Lissa interrupted. Should pretend that these primitives are our equals? Should I bow and scrape before beings who only discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago? My people have sailed between stars for 10 millennia. She turned back to Captain Chen. I have heard rumors that humans participated in major battles. I find this difficult to believe. You look like you would break if someone pushed you too hard. No offense intended, of course. The lie was obvious. Every word she spoke was designed to offend, to diminish, to mock. She was enjoying herself immensely, feeding off the attention of the crowd. Some beings looked uncomfortable, but many of the younger ones smiled and whispered to each other. Your medals, Lisa continued, pointing at the ribbons on Chen's chest. What are these for? Participation? Did you receive them just for showing up? In the Karvathi Empire, we only award honors to warriors who demonstrate true courage and skill. She laughed again, and this time more of her companions joined in. The sound echoed through the hall, drawing even more attention. The human soldiers stood firm, their discipline absolute. Not one of them moved or spoke, though the younger ones showed subtle signs of tension in their shoulders and necks. Lissa felt powerful. She was the center of attention, making everyone laugh, demonstrating Karvathi's superiority for all to see. She had no idea that her world was about to shatter. The crowd suddenly went silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. The beings who had been laughing stopped abruptly, their faces transforming from amusement to fear. Even Lissa's companions took several steps backward, their eyes wide with terror. Lissa felt a presence behind her, powerful and overwhelming. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. She turned slowly, and her blood turned to ice. Empress Valeria stood 10 paces away. She was taller than her daughter, broader in the shoulders, and her silver skin bore the pale scars of countless battles. She wore formal battle armor instead of ceremonial robes, dark metal plates engraved with names of fallen warriors. Her violet eyes, so similar to Lissa's own, burned with a fury that made the princess want to disappear. The Empress walked forward slowly. Each footstep echoed in the silent hall. Delegates moved aside quickly, creating a path. No one spoke. No one dared even breathe loudly. Valeria's reputation was legendary throughout the galaxy. She had ruled the Karvathi Empire for 300 years, had led them through wars and peace, and had never shown mercy to those who dishonored her people. Lissa. The word was spoken quietly, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Princess Lissa felt her confidence crumble like sand. Mother, I was simply— Be silent. The command was soft but final. Empress Valeria stopped beside her daughter. She looked at Captain Marcus Chen for a long moment. He met her gaze with calm respect, no fear in his eyes. Something passed between them, an understanding that only those who had fought together could share. Then Valeria turned to face her daughter, and Lissa saw something in her mother's eyes that she had never seen before. Not just anger, disappointment, deep, profound disappointment that hurt worse than any punishment. Do you know, Valeria said quietly, what this man did during the war? Lissa shook her head, unable to speak. Then it is time you learned the truth about humans and about the price of the peace you take for granted. The truth unveiled, Empress. Valeria stood before the assembled delegates, her presence commanding absolute silence. The grand hall of Zentari Prime, which moments ago had been filled with mockery and laughter, now felt heavy with anticipation. Princess Lissa stood frozen, feeling smaller with each passing second. 3 years ago, Valeria began, her voice carrying to every corner of the massive chamber. The Karvathi Empire faced complete annihilation. The Jarek Collective had launched a surprise assault on our home system. They came with a fleet of 5,000 warships, more firepower than we had ever faced in our long history. Lissa felt confusion wash over her. She had been told the war was a glorious victory, a demonstration of Karvathi might. No one had ever mentioned near annihilation or desperate circumstances. Our own fleet numbered 1,200 ships, Valeria continued. We were outnumbered and outgunned. The Jarek had studied our tactics for decades, preparing for this moment. They knew exactly how we would fight, and they had counters for everything we did. The Empress walked slowly through the crowd, her armored boots clicking against the crystalline floor. The battle took place in the Crimson Nebula, near our home world. We fought with everything we had, but we were losing. Ship after ship fell to their assault. Our shields could not withstand their new weapons. Our tactics failed against their superior numbers. She paused, her eyes distant with painful memory. After 6 hours of combat, we had lost half our fleet. The Xeric were pushing through our defensive lines. They would reach our home world within hours. Billions of Karvathi civilians waited below, helpless and unprotected. Lisa had never heard this story. Her tutors had never mentioned it. She looked around the hall and saw that many of the older delegates were nodding slowly, remembering their own terror during those dark days. "I commanded the flagship personally," Valeria said. "I watched my people die, watched our ships explode, watched our hopes fade. I sent out a distress call to every ally we had, every species we had ever helped, every civilization that owed us favors." Her voice grew harder. "Do you know how many responded?" "None, not one. They all had reasons, of course. Their own battles to fight, their own people to protect. They sent sympathies and promises to remember us fondly, but no help. No ships, no soldiers, nothing." The hall remained silent. Even the youngest delegates sensed they were witnessing something important, something that would change how they understood the galaxy. "We prepared for our final stand," Valeria continued. "We would die fighting, protecting our home to the last ship, the last warrior, the last breath. It was all we could do." She stopped walking and turned to face Captain Chen. "Then they came, without being asked. Without promises of payment or glory, without any guarantee of victory or even survival. They came because it was right." Lisa looked at the human captain with new eyes. He still stood at attention, his scarred face neutral, but she could see something in his eyes now. Memory, pain, loss. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace directly between our forces and the Xeric, Valeria said. 200 ships, small by Karvathi standards, simple designs, basic weapons. They should have been destroyed in minutes, the Empress's voice filled with emotion, but they fought with a ferocity I had never witnessed. They did not calculate acceptable losses or retreat when odds became unfavorable. They committed everything to every moment. Their ships dove into Xeric formations at speeds that should have torn them apart. They rammed when their weapons ran empty. They self-destructed to take out enemy capital ships. She walked closer to her daughter. Captain Chen commanded a strike force of 20 small vessels. His mission was to disable the Xeric command carrier, the ship coordinating their entire assault. It was protected by 300 enemy fighters and heavy defensive shields. Lissa tried to imagine 20 ships attacking 300. It seemed impossible, suicidal. Chen and his pilots attacked anyway, Valeria said. They knew most of them would die. They knew the odds were hopeless. They attacked because success meant saving lives, and that was enough reason. The Empress looked at Captain Chen with profound respect. 18 of his 20 ships were destroyed in the assault. But they reached the command carrier. They crippled it. Without coordination, the Xeric formation fell into chaos. It gave us the opening we needed. She turned back to Lissa. While Chen's pilots sacrificed themselves in space, his ground forces were needed elsewhere. The Xeric had boarded my flagship through a breach in our hull. 300 enemy soldiers poured through, heading straight for the bridge. If they reached me, they could force a surrender and end the battle. Valeria's hand moved to touch a scar on her neck. Captain Chen was on my ship as a military liaison. When the breach occurred, he had 40 human Marines with him. Just 40 against 300 Xeric warriors. Lissa knew about the Xeric. Everyone did. They were massive beings, 8 feet tall with 4 arms and natural armor plating. They were bred for combat, genetically enhanced and utterly ruthless. 40 humans against 300 Xeric seemed less like a battle and more like an execution. Chen and his Marines held them, Valeria said quietly. For 9 hours they held that corridor. The Xeric kept coming in waves and the humans kept fighting. When their ammunition ran low, they used blades. When their blades broke, they used their hands. When they could barely stand, they kept fighting. She looked at her daughter with eyes that had seen too much death. I watched it happen through security feeds. I watched humans fight with wounds that should have killed them. I watched them drag injured comrades to safety while under fire. I watched them protect each other with their own bodies. The Empress's voice grew softer. 3 times during that battle, Xeric warriors broke through the human line. 3 times they reached me. 3 times Captain Chen pulled me back from death and put himself between me and the enemy. She pointed at the scar on Chen's face. That mark came from Xeric claws. He took it, protecting me. The burns on his hands came from an exploding power cell. He absorbed the blast that would have killed 3 of my officers. The way he moves carefully on his left side? That is from broken ribs that never healed properly. He took a Jarek blade meant for my heart. Lissa felt tears forming in her eyes. She had mocked these scars. She had called them marks of weakness and clumsiness. When reinforcements finally cut through to us, Valeria continued, only 12 of Chen's 40 Marines were still alive. 12. They had held against impossible odds for 9 hours. The corridor was filled with bodies, both human and Jarek. The walls were scorched black. The air was thick with smoke and blood. The Empress looked around the hall. The human fleet suffered 70% casualties in the Battle of Crimson Nebula. 70%. That means 7 out of every 10 humans who came to help us died or were wounded so severely they could never fight again. She let those numbers sink in. Lissa did the quick calculation in her head. Of the 200 ships, 140 had been destroyed or crippled. Thousands of humans had died helping strangers. They did not have to come, Valeria said. We had no formal alliance with Earth. We had barely spoken to humans before the war. We had nothing they needed, no resources they wanted. They came because they saw people in danger and decided to help. The Empress walked back to stand beside Captain Chen. After the battle, after we had driven back the Jarek and saved our homeworld, I asked Captain Chen why. Why did humans sacrifice so much for people they barely knew? Why did they risk everything for strangers? She looked at Lisa. Do you know what he said? He said that doing nothing while others suffer is not an option. He said that standing aside when you can help makes you responsible for what happens. He said that humans had learned hard lessons in their own history about the cost of inaction. Valeria's voice grew stronger. He told me that on Earth they have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Humans decided to do something even though it cost them terribly. The hall remained silent. Lisa looked at Captain Chen with completely different eyes. He was not weak. He was not primitive. He was a warrior who had faced impossible odds and survived. He was a hero who had saved billions of lives. So when you ask what humans contributed to the war effort, Valeria said, turning to her daughter with cold fury, the answer is everything. They contributed everything. Their ships, their soldiers, their lives. They fought in every major battle. They held lines that should have broken. They rescued civilians when others fled. They stood between darkness and innocent people across the entire galaxy. She stepped closer to Lissa. And you mocked them. You called them weak. You insulted their appearance and their technology. You laughed at scars earned protecting others. You demonstrated profound ignorance and profound cruelty. Lisa wanted to defend herself, to explain that she had not known, but the words died in her throat. Ignorance was not an excuse. She should have asked. She should have learned. She should have understood before speaking. Captain Chen saved my life, Valeria said. He saved your life, though you were too sheltered to know it. He saved our entire civilization, and you repaid that sacrifice with mockery. The Empress's next words were spoken quietly, but they carried the weight of absolute command. You will kneel before this warrior. You will bow your head and acknowledge the honor he has earned. You will apologize for your ignorance and your cruelty, and you will mean every word. Redemption and understanding. Princess Lisa stood frozen, her mother's words echoing in her mind like thunder. The grand hall remained silent, hundreds of beings watching to see what she would do. Her entire world had been torn apart in the span of minutes. Everything she thought she knew had been revealed as lies or ignorance. She looked at Captain Marcus Chen, really looked at him for the first time. The scar on his face was not a mark of clumsiness but a badge of courage. The careful way he stood was not weakness but evidence of injuries taken for others. The simple uniform was not primitive but dignified. The silence he had maintained was not stupidity but discipline beyond anything she had ever shown. Lissa's pride made one final stand. She was royalty. She had been raised to command, not to kneel. The thought of bowing before anyone, especially in public, went against everything she had been taught about maintaining authority and dignity. But then she thought about those 40 Marines holding a corridor for 9 hours. She thought about 18 ships sacrificing themselves to save strangers. She thought about 70% casualties, thousands of humans who would never go home because they chose to help people they had never met. What was her pride compared to that? What was her dignity worth next to such sacrifice? Tears began flowing down her silver cheeks. She had been so wrong, so incredibly wrong. She had judged without knowledge. spoken without understanding, and hurt people who deserved nothing but honor and respect. Slowly, feeling like she was moving through deep water, Lissa took a step toward Captain Chen, then another. Her legs trembled and her hands shook. She stopped directly in front of him, close enough to see the fine details of his face. Up close, she could see more scars. Small ones on his neck, others on his hands that she had not noticed before. His brown eyes looked tired, carrying weight she could not fully understand. But there was no hatred in those eyes, no desire for revenge, only quiet patience. "I did not know," Lissa said, her voice breaking. "I did not understand. I was taught about Karvathi greatness, but never about the cost of peace. I was shown our victories, but never the sacrifices others made for us." She paused, struggling to find words adequate to the moment. "But ignorance is not an excuse. I should have asked. I should have learned. I should have honored those who protected us instead of mocking them." Captain Chen remained silent, waiting. He did not make this easier for her, and she realized he should not. This was her burden to carry, her mistake to acknowledge. "The scars I laughed at," Lissa continued, "were earned protecting my mother and my people. The medals I dismissed were given for courage I cannot imagine. The silence I mocked was discipline I have never demonstrated." She took a deep breath. "You saved billions of lives, including mine, and I repaid that by treating you with contempt. I am ashamed. I am sorry. I am not worthy to speak your name or stand in your presence." Then Princess Lissa did something she had never done before in her life. She dropped to one knee, bowed her head, and exposed the back of her neck in the traditional Karvathi gesture of absolute respect and submission. The position left her vulnerable and humble. It acknowledged Captain Chen as her superior in honor and courage. It was the deepest apology her culture could offer. "I kneel before you, Captain Marcus Chen," she said clearly, her voice carrying through the silent hall, "not because my mother commands it, though she is right to do so. I kneel because you have earned honor beyond measure and I have shown you nothing but disrespect. Please forgive my cruelty and ignorance." For a long moment nothing happened. Lissa stayed on one knee, head bowed, waiting. She would stay there for hours if necessary. It was the least she could do. Then she felt a hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. She looked up, startled. Captain Chen had stepped forward, breaking his rigid stance for the first time. His scarred hand rested on her shoulder and his expression had softened slightly. "Stand up," he said quietly. His voice was deep, with an accent she found difficult to place. "Please," Lissa shook her head. "I cannot. Not until you accept my apology." "Then I accept," Chen said simply. "Now please stand up." She rose slowly, unsteadily. Standing directly before him, she realized they were almost the same height. He was not small as she had thought. Her perception had been wrong about everything. Chen looked at her for a moment, his brown eyes thoughtful. "You did not know," he said. "Now you do. That is what matters. Knowledge without action is useless, but you have already acted. You acknowledged your mistake and apologized. That takes courage. Not as much courage as fighting impossible battles," Lissa said. A slight smile touched Chen's lips. "Different kinds of courage. Facing an enemy is frightening, but at least you can fight back. Facing your own mistakes and admitting you were wrong, that is harder. No weapons can help you there." He lowered his hand from her shoulder. "I have met many beings across the galaxy. Some made mistakes and refused to admit them, doubling down on cruelty to protect their pride. You did not do that. You listened, learned, and changed. That is all anyone can ask." Lissa wiped tears from her face. "I want to make this right. I want to help. Please tell me how." Chen considered this carefully. "Your mother mentioned that many human veterans struggle with injuries and trauma. Medical care is expensive and Earth's resources were strained by the war. If you truly want to help, perhaps your people's advanced healing technology could be shared with those who sacrificed so much." "Yes," Lissa said immediately. "I will organize it personally. I will visit your hospitals and meet the veterans. I will learn their stories and ensure they receive the best care we can provide." "That would mean a great deal," Chen said. Empress Valeria approached them. She looked at her daughter, and some of the cold fury had left her expression. "You have taken the first step. But this cannot be a single moment of redemption. You must follow through. You must prove through continued action that you have truly learned and changed." "I will, Mother," Lissa said firmly. "I promise you I will spend my life honoring the sacrifices made for us." I will never again speak without understanding or judge without knowledge. Valeria nodded slowly. Good. Tomorrow you will begin working with our diplomatic corps on human relations. You will study their history and culture. You will become a bridge between our peoples. The Empress turned to address the assembled delegates. Let this be a lesson to everyone here. Peace is not free. It is bought with blood and sacrifice by those brave enough to stand against darkness. We owe them our lives and our freedom. The least we can do is remember them and honor their example. She looked around the hall, her gaze stopping on younger faces. Many of you are like my daughter was, sheltered from the war's true cost. That is not a crime. But remaining ignorant after being shown the truth would be unforgivable. Learn from this moment. Understand what was given so you could stand here in peace. An older human officer stepped forward. His gray hair and weathered face spoke of long years of service. Empress Valeria speaks truly, but I want to say something on behalf of all humans present. Everyone turned to listen. We did not fight for glory or recognition, the officer said. We fought because it was right. If you want to honor those who fell, then build a galaxy worth the price they paid. Protect those who need protection. Stand against cruelty wherever you find it. Be the people they died believing you could be. The words settled over the crowd like a blessing. Simple words but powerful. A challenge and a gift. The gathering began to transform. Young delegates approached the human soldiers, speaking quietly, asking questions, seeking to understand. Barriers between species seemed less solid than they had been an hour before. Something had shifted in the room, in the hearts of those present. Lissa stood watching it all, feeling raw and exposed, but also strangely lighter. She had shed the weight of ignorance and false pride. What remained felt more real, more honest. Captain Chen prepared to leave with the rest of the human delegation. Before he went, he turned back to Lissa one final time. Princess, he said formally, may I give you one piece of advice? Please, Lisa said eagerly. Actions speak louder than words. Do not just promise to be better, every day in small ways and large. When you see someone being dismissed or mocked, stand up for them. When you see someone in need, help them. When you have power, use it to protect those who have none. I will, Lisa promised. I swear to you I will make my life worthy of the sacrifice your people made. Chen extended his hand in the human gesture of farewell. Lisa grasped it firmly, feeling the roughness of his scarred palm, the strength in his grip. Then that is all anyone can ask, Chen said. He released her hand, bowed to Empress Valeria, and departed with his fellow soldiers. Lisa watched him go, already planning her next steps. She would visit Earth. She would meet veterans and their families. She would organize medical assistance and memorial programs. She would ensure that the human sacrifice was never forgotten. But more than that, she would change herself. She would become worthy of the peace others had bought with their blood. She would be better not just for one moment, but for every day that followed. Empress Valeria stood beside her daughter. You surprise me today, she said quietly. You chose growth over pride. That is harder than any battle I have fought. I had a good teacher, Lysa replied, looking at her mother with new understanding. No, Valeria said. You had a teacher who failed you by shielding you from hard truths. That was my mistake. But you learned anyway when it mattered most. That strength came from within you. They stood together in silence, watching the celebration resume around them. But it was different now. More genuine. More aware of the cost behind the peace. Princess Lysa knew that this night would define the rest of her life. She had been given a gift, the opportunity to learn and grow from her mistakes. She would not waste it. She would become the leader her people needed, the bridge between humans and Karvathi, and a voice for remembering those who sacrificed everything. The galaxy had been saved by heroes who expected nothing in return. The least she could do was make their sacrifice meaningful. And she would, for every day that remained to her. Bridges built from sacrifice. 6 months had passed since the incident at Zentari Prime, and Princess Lysa had transformed in ways that shocked everyone who knew her. The shallow, arrogant young noble who had mocked human soldiers no longer existed. In her place stood someone harder, wiser, and infinitely more compassionate. She stood now in the medical wing of Earth's largest veteran facility, a sprawling complex in what humans called Geneva. The building was functional rather than beautiful. built quickly to handle the flood of wounded soldiers returning from war. The walls were plain white, the floors were simple tile, and everything carried the faint antiseptic smell of hospitals everywhere. Lisa had insisted on coming alone, without attendants or guards. She wore simple clothes rather than royal robes. She wanted the veterans to see her as a person seeking to learn, not as royalty demanding attention. Her mother had approved of this approach, though she had assigned hidden security to watch from a distance. The director of the facility, a middle-aged human woman named Dr. Sarah Torres, walked beside her through the corridors. Torres had warm brown skin, tired eyes, and the calm competence of someone who had seen too much suffering, but refused to stop fighting against it. "We have 372 patients currently in residence," Torres explained as they walked. "Some will recover enough to return to normal lives. Others will need assistance for the rest of their days." All of them gave more than anyone should have to give. They stopped before a large window looking into a rehabilitation room. Inside, veterans worked with therapists, learning to use prosthetic limbs or recovering motor functions damaged by injuries. Lisa watched a young man, probably in his 20s, struggling to make a mechanical hand close into a fist. His face was tight with concentration and frustration. "That is Corporal Devon Hayes," Torres said quietly. "He lost both arms below the elbow during the defense of Station Meridian. A plasma explosion. He was pulling wounded Thexian civilians from a burning transport when it happened." Lisa felt her throat tighten. "May I speak with him?" "If he is willing." Some veterans do not want to talk about their experiences. We never force them. They entered the rehabilitation room. Several veterans looked up, and Lisa saw recognition flash across their faces. News of what happened at Centauri Prime had spread throughout human space. Some looked curious, others guarded. One or two smiled slightly, which Lisa took as encouragement. She approached Corporal Hayes carefully. "Excuse me," she said. "I am Princess Lisa of the Carvathi Empire. May I speak with you for a moment?" Hayes looked at her, then at his therapist, who nodded encouragingly. "I guess so," he said. His voice carried a hint of wariness. "What does royalty want with someone like me?" "To listen," Lisa said simply. "To learn. To understand what you sacrificed and why." Hayes studied her face for a long moment. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him because his expression softened slightly. "Pull up a chair then. But I am not good at fancy talk, so you will have to settle for plain truth." "Plain truth is exactly what I need," Lisa said, sitting down beside him. Hayes flexed his mechanical fingers again, managing to close them halfway this time. "You are the one who insulted Captain Chen at that peace summit, right? Then apologized after your mother told you what actually happened?" Lisa felt shame color her cheeks silver. "Yes, that was me. I was ignorant and cruel, and I have been trying to make amends ever since." "Chen is a good man," Hayes said. "Saved my life once, actually. We were both at Station Meridian when the Zarek attacked. Whole place was falling apart, fire everywhere, people screaming. Chen went back into the flames 4 times to pull people out. On the 4th trip, part of the ceiling collapsed on him. Broke 3 ribs. He still carried 2 Thexian children to safety before he would accept medical treatment." He looked at his mechanical hands. "I lost my arm saving people, but I was just following Chen's example. He showed us what it meant to put others first, even when it cost you everything." "Why did you do it?" Lisa asked. "Why did you go back for those civilians when you knew it was dangerous?" Hayes looked at her like she had asked why water was wet. "Because they needed help, and I could provide it. What else was I supposed to do? Stand there and watch them burn?" It was the same simple logic Captain Chen had expressed. The same instinct to act rather than watch. Lisa was beginning to understand that this was not unique to Chen or Hayes. This was something fundamental about humans, a core part of how they saw the world. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Losing your arms, I mean." Hayes was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. "I regret that I got hurt, sure. I regret that I cannot hold things the way I used to, cannot feel textures or temperatures. I regret that I will never play guitar again, which was my favorite hobby. But do I regret saving those kids? No, never. They are alive because of what I did. That matters more than my arms." He managed to close his mechanical fist completely this time, and a look of triumph crossed his face. "Besides, these new hands are pretty amazing once you learn how to use them. Carvathi technology, actually. Your people's medical teams have been incredible. They are helping us recover faster than we ever thought possible." Lisa felt a warm glow in her chest. This was part of her work over the past 6 months. She had coordinated the sharing of Karvathi regenerative technology with human medical facilities. She had personally overseen the training of human doctors in advanced prosthetics and neural rehabilitation techniques. It was not enough. Could never be enough, but it was something. "I am glad we could help," she said. "After everything humans did for us, it is the least we can offer in return." Hayes smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. "You know, I was not sure about you when you first walked in. Figured you might be here for publicity or to make yourself feel better. But you are actually sincere, aren't you?" "I am trying to be," Lisa said. "I have a lot to learn and a long way to go. But I am committed to this path." "Good," Hayes said. "We need more people like you. People willing to admit when they are wrong and actually change. Most folks just double down on their mistakes." Dr. Torres approached them. "Princess Lissa, there is someone else who asked to meet you. If you have time." Lissa stood, saying goodbye to Hayes and wishing him well with his rehabilitation. She followed Torres through the facility to a quieter wing where the most severely injured patients resided. They stopped outside a private room. Through the window, Lisa could see a man lying in a specialized bed, his body connected to various medical devices. His face was scarred beyond recognition, and most of his body was covered in regenerative bandages. "This is Lieutenant Marcus Webb," Torres said softly. "He was a pilot. During the Battle of Helios Breach, his fighter was hit. He could have ejected, but there was a damaged civilian transport directly in the path of his crash. If he ejected, his ship would have collided with the transport, killing everyone aboard." Lissa felt her chest tighten. She knew where this story was going. "Webb stayed with his fighter," Torres continued. "He used his last bit of control to steer away from the transport. He crashed into an asteroid instead. The impact nearly killed him. He has been in recovery for 2 years now, undergoing dozens of surgeries. He will never walk again, never see properly again, never have the life he once had." "But the transport?" Lissa asked, though she already knew the answer. 217 civilians survived because of his choice, mostly Meridian families fleeing the war zone. Torres opened the door quietly. "Lieutenant Webb, you have a visitor if you are feeling up to it." The man in the bed turned his head slightly, the movement obviously painful. When he spoke, his voice was rough, damaged by smoke inhalation during the crash. "The Karvathi princess? I heard you were visiting. Come in." Lisa entered the room carefully, approaching the bed. Up close, she could see the extent of Webb's injuries. Burns covered most of his visible skin. One eye was clouded and useless. His hands were twisted, the fingers locked in positions that looked agonizing. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Dr. Torres told me what you did." Webb made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Just did what anyone would do. Could not let those people die. Not when I could do something about it. Not anyone would have done it," Lisa said firmly. "Most beings would have chosen to save themselves. You chose differently, and it cost you everything." "Not everything," Webb said. "I am still alive. Still get to see sunrises when they wheel my bed near the window. Still get to hear music and taste food and talk to interesting visitors. Lots of people did not get that. My wingman Sarah Chen, she died in the same battle. Never made it home. I got to come home even if I am broken. That is something." Lissa found herself crying, tears running down her silver cheeks. She had cried more in the past 6 months than in her entire previous life. "I wish I could give you back what you lost." "Not possible," Webb said matter-of-factly. "But your people's medical technology has helped with the pain. The regenerative treatments are slowly repairing nerve damage we thought was permanent. Maybe in a few years I will be able to use my hands again. That is more hope than I had before your assistants arrived." He paused, catching his breath. Speaking was clearly difficult for him. "Besides, you are doing exactly what we hoped people would do. You are learning. You are helping. You are making sure our sacrifice meant something. That is the best gift you could give any of us." Lissa spent another hour in the facility, meeting more veterans and hearing their stories. Each one added weight to her understanding, depth to her commitment. These were not abstract heroes from distant stories. They were real people who had suffered real losses for strangers they had never met. As she prepared to leave, Dr. Torres walked her to the entrance. "You have been coming here twice a week for 3 months now," the doctor said. "You meet with veterans, you listen to their stories, you arrange for additional medical support. Why, what drives you to keep returning?" Lisa thought about the question carefully. "Because I need to understand. Not just intellectually, but deeply. I need to see the faces behind the statistics, hear the voices behind the numbers. I need to carry this weight with me so I never forget what peace actually costs. She looked back at the facility. And because they deserve to be seen and heard, they gave everything. And the least I can do is witness that sacrifice, honor it, and ensure others know about it. Torres smiled, a sad but genuine expression. You have changed a great deal since Centauri Prime. Captain Chen spoke highly of you when he visited last month. He said you reminded him why they fought, to protect the possibility of growth and redemption. Chen was here? Lisa asked, surprised. He visits regularly, spends time with the veterans, especially the ones struggling with trauma. He does not talk much about his own experiences, but his presence helps them. They know he understands. Lisa made a mental note to coordinate her visits with Chen's if possible. She had been exchanging messages with him regularly, seeking his guidance on how best to help, but she had not seen him in person since that night at Centauri Prime. She left the medical facility and walked through Geneva's streets. The city was beautiful in its own way, different from Carvathi architecture but equally meaningful. Humans built things to last, to serve purposes, to house communities. There was an honesty in their constructions that she had grown to appreciate. Her communicator chimed. A message from her mother. Council meeting in 2 hours. Your presence required. We are finalizing the Human Carvathi Alliance Treaty. Lisa smiled. This was the culmination of months of work. The treaty would formalize the relationship between their peoples, establish mutual defense agreements, create cultural exchange programs, and set up ongoing medical and technological cooperation. It was exactly the kind of bridge she had been working to build. She made her way to the Carvathi Embassy, a graceful building that blended human and Carvathi design elements. Her mother had insisted on this architectural cooperation, wanting the building itself to symbolize their new relationship. Inside, preparations were already underway. Diplomats from both species moved through the halls, finalizing documents and coordinating details. Empress Valeria stood in the main conference room, reviewing holographic displays of the treaty terms. Mother, Lisa said, entering the room. Valeria looked up and smiled, a warm expression that had become more common in recent months. Their relationship had deepened after Centauri Prime, built on honesty rather than illusions. Daughter, how was your visit to the medical facility? Heartbreaking and inspiring in equal measure, Lisa replied. I met Lieutenant Webb today, the pilot who crashed into an asteroid to save a civilian transport. Valeria's expression grew somber. I know of him. His sacrifice exemplifies everything we should aspire to. How is he? In pain, but hopeful. Our regenerative treatments are helping more than human medicine alone could achieve. He may regain use of his hands eventually. Good. Make sure he receives whatever resources he needs, regardless of cost. They worked together for the next hour, reviewing the treaty terms one final time. Everything was in order. The agreement was fair, balanced, and would benefit both peoples immensely. As they worked, Captain Chen arrived with the human diplomatic delegation. He wore his formal uniform, medals gleaming. When he saw Lisa, he nodded respectfully, a greeting between colleagues and friends. Captain, Lisa said warmly, it is good to see you again. And you, Princess. Dr. Torres mentioned you visited Lieutenant Webb today. Thank you for that. He has been struggling lately and your visit gave him a boost. He is remarkable. They all are. I only wish I could do more. You are doing exactly what needs to be done, Chen assured her. Building understanding, creating connections, ensuring the sacrifices are remembered. That is the foundation everything else must rest upon. The treaty signing ceremony began an hour later. Representatives from both governments gathered, along with observers from dozens of other species. The event was being broadcast across the galaxy, a symbol of how former strangers had become steadfast allies. Empress Valeria spoke first, her voice carrying authority and emotion. 6 months ago, my daughter made a terrible mistake. She mocked a human soldier, insulting the very people who had saved our civilization. That moment of ignorance became a turning point, not just for her, but for all of us. She gestured to Lisa. My daughter has spent these months learning, growing and working to build bridges between our peoples. She represents the best of what can happen when we face our mistakes honestly and commit to being better. Lysa felt pride and humility wash over her in equal measure. Valeria continued. Today we formalize what was already true. Humans and Karvathi are allies, bound by shared sacrifice and mutual respect. This treaty is not just words on documents. It is a promise that we will stand together, support each other, and honor the memory of those who gave everything so we could stand here in peace. The human ambassador, an older woman named Ambassador Chen, no relation to the captain, stepped forward. The Karvathi Empire faced annihilation and called for help. Humanity answered that call not because we expected rewards, but because it was right. Today we see the fruit of that choice. A friendship built on sacrifice, strengthened by understanding, and pointing toward a future brighter than either of us could build alone. She smiled at Lysa. Princess Lysa has become a symbol of what is possible when people choose growth over pride. She has worked tirelessly to support our veterans, to learn our culture, and to build connections between our peoples. She represents the future we are creating together. The treaty was signed by both sides, sealed with ancient Karvathi ritual and human tradition. As the signatures were applied, the audience erupted in applause. Something important had happened here, something that would echo through generations. After the ceremony, a reception was held. Lysa found herself surrounded by well-wishers from dozens of species, all wanting to congratulate her on the treaty and her personal transformation. She handled the attention with grace she had never possessed before, always redirecting praise toward the human veterans and the importance of remembering sacrifice. Captain Chen approached her during a quiet moment. "You have done well, Princess. Better than I think anyone expected, including yourself." "I had good teachers," Lysa replied. "You, my mother, the veterans I have met. All of you showed me what true strength and honor look like." Chen smiled. "The galaxy needs more people like you, people willing to learn and change. The treaty we signed today is important, but the real bridge between our peoples is understanding. You have built that understanding through your work and your commitment." "There is still so much more to do," Lysa said. "More veterans to help, more stories to learn, more connections to build." "There will always be more work," Chen agreed. "That is the nature of building something meaningful. But you have made an excellent start, and that is what matters." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching humans and Karvathi mingling freely, sharing stories and laughter. 6 months ago, such a scene would have been impossible. Now it felt natural, right? Comment for next part.